What? Long HaoChen exclaimed in surprise, his entire consciousness in that instant, actually completely blanked out. Necromancer Saint? No wonder the long-dormant cataclysmic radiant elixirs referred to himself as Necromancer Saint instead of Necromancer. That term, Saint, astonishingly, was sacred, representing the sanctity of light. So, it turns out that a necromancer can actually have the light attribute. How is this possible? Aren't necromancers supposed to deal with corpses and death? Being sinister beings dwelling in darkness? It can be said that Elix's final sentence was more shocking to Long HaoChen than anything before. It was a complete cognitive upheaval. A gray-white radiance reappeared, but this time it was only a small cluster, silently appearing in front of Long HaoChen, hovering in the air. It was a necklace, the necklace itself, with white transparent gems the size of soybeans, emitting a faint white fluorescence, a gentle luminous aura that gave people a warmth from the depths of the heart, a space that was originally filled with the aura of death. Almost completely transformed into light because of its appearance. The dense and slightly viscous light elements almost instantly replenished Long HaoChen's expended spiritual power through the holy guiding spirit furnace, from all the previous spiritual power consumption. There was a small pendant on the necklace, roughly the size of a thumbnail, also white, shaped like a tiny skull, with golden flames flickering in its eye sockets. The viscous light elements spread outward from it as the center. My dear disciple, this is my token. Fortunately, you're not one of those filthy dark necromancers, otherwise I would have had to give up on you. This necklace has accompanied me for 896 years, until the moment I fell asleep. Oh, remember this, never let anyone from the Radiant Church see it. Because the materials used to make it are the skull of the first-generation Pope of the Radiant Church. Just imagine those holy frauds, finding out that the tomb of the first-generation Pope was excavated by me. They must have felt as if they were constipated for a year. I find it incredibly exciting. The name of the necklace is Eternal Melody. It's my token, and also the key to unlock the eternal slumber. If you have trustworthy companions in the future, you can bring them here. For training, of course, the condition is that, among them, there must not be any of those most detestable and filthy possessors of dark attributes. If you bring them here, and if anyone harbors ill intentions towards you, the eternal slumber will also make them fall into eternal sleep. From now on, you are my successor, the new master of the eternal slumber. Long HaoChen had no ability to refuse at all. As soon as the words fell, the warmest light elements flowed into him like liquid, and the Eternal Melody necklace quietly appeared around his neck, its translucent crystal bone marrow pendant hanging right at his chest. Immediately, Long HaoChen felt a warm sensation throughout his body, as if he were soaking in warm water, his whole body suddenly turning into a translucent golden color. It was as if he had entered a state of luminosity. The rich light elements filled every corner of his body, continuously nourishing his body. Blue Rain, Light Lotus, and Holy Guiding Spirit Furnace, including the light elemental elf, Yiting, emitting happy vibes in his chest. His liquid internal spiritual power was increasing rapidly at a visible rate. It continued to increase by at least 500 points, before the growth rate began to slow down. Meanwhile, the skull pendant, radiating a sacred aura, was tightly adhered to the center of Long HaoChen's chest. Go forth, my child. From now on, everything here is yours. Even if there are no tests, you can leave here whenever you want. I look forward to your appearance before me. With these final words, the voice of the slumbering cataclysmic radiant elixirs faded away completely. Though the surroundings were still enveloped in gray-white deathly aura, the Long HaoChen adorned with the eternal melody shone like a sun in this place, emanating a strong golden radiance. Even more astonishingly, this radiance harmoniously coexisted with the deathly aura of this place, with an incredible coordination and no conflict at all. The door behind Long HaoChen quietly opened, indicating that he didn't need to undergo any trials, and he could leave at any time. However, at that moment, he stood there motionless, because a large amount of information was rapidly flooding into his mind, becoming a part of his memory. The source of this information was none other than the eternal melody. These pieces of information included the fundamental control of the eternal slumber, with much of it still sealed within the eternal melody necklace itself. And more about the slumbering cataclysmic radiant elixirs, insights and methods of practicing necromancy. This part of the information is truly immense, and what's even more significant, no matter how much Long HaoChen wishes not to become a Necromancer Saint, this information still penetrates without resistance, and deeply imprints upon his soul, something that he will never be able to forget. HaoYue crouched behind Long HaoChen, quietly observing him, emanating a gentle radiance from its 3 heads and 6 eyes, occasionally glancing towards the depths of the hall, with a hint of reminiscence in its pupils, yet tinged with a touch of confusion within those memories. Standing there, it took Long HaoChen a full half-hour to gradually regain his clarity. With the massive influx of information already deeply imprinted into his memory, and at this moment, Long HaoChen had an unpleasant expression on his face. Even if the slumbering cataclysmic radiant elixirs was indeed a necromancer of the light attribute, he was still, after all, a necromancer, one of the culprits responsible for the catastrophic events that befell humanity 10,000 years ago. How could Long HaoChen possibly be willing to become his successor, let alone wish to learn any necromantic magic? Suddenly turning around, Long HaoChen gazed at HaoYue with intense eyes. HaoYue, you've known all along what this place is for, haven't you? Long HaoChen was quite angry. If only HaoYue could have told him everything that happened here beforehand, he wouldn't have chosen to come here at all. Despite the immense boost that the eternal melody provided him, significantly enhancing his power, he was still unwilling to accept it all. Once that eternal melody was put on, it couldn't be taken off anymore. Woo-woo! Innocence filled HaoYue's 3 heads and 6 eyes, blinking as it transmitted a series of messages to Long HaoChen. Sensing the information it conveyed, Long HaoChen's expression gradually changed, shifting from anger to astonishment. Grand prophecy? Your innate ability? Gaping at HaoYue, Long HaoChen's face was filled with incredulity. HaoYue was actually telling him that it possessed the ability of grand prophecy, which could predict some future events to a certain extent, and the reason they entered this castle was due to its prophecy. Even though it wasn't entirely clear on its sensation, it could only sense that this place would bring Long HaoChen opportunities without any danger. That's why it insisted on letting Long HaoChen enter here. A bitter smile appeared on his face. Long HaoChen walked up to HaoYue, embracing Xiaoguang's large head. I'm sorry, it's my fault, I shouldn't have doubted you. It's just that the impact of all this was too overwhelming for me earlier. To think that I've inexplicably become the chosen successor of a necromancer, this is really… Xiaoguang, Xiaohua, and Xiaoqing all gathered around, gently nuzzling against him. HaoYue, what should I do? Should we just leave this place be, pretend that none of this ever happened? After all, once I leave, the Tower of Eternity will enter another parallel plane. HaoYue nodded its 3 heads and then shook them. Long HaoChen said with some confusion. So, you're saying that this is also an opportunity, and it's not necessary for me to learn necromancy, but gaining experience here is also beneficial? HaoYue nodded repeatedly. Long HaoChen furrowed his brows and fell into contemplation. One could say that he was deeply conflicted. The Tower of Eternity had a profound impact on him, especially considering that the necromantic magic was imprinted into his memory. No matter how unwilling he was, he couldn't just shake off those memories. The eternal melody would also remain around his neck, bringing him benefits. Long HaoChen had never been a greedy person, quite the opposite, for every bit of kindness he received, he felt the need to repay tenfold. Despite his reluctance, the truth was that he had indeed gained benefits from the cataclysmic radiant elixirs, benefits that he couldn't just discard. And that's what troubled him the most. After a moment, Long HaoChen slowly lifted his head and sighed, saying, Perhaps you're right, but I can't decide alone. Whether we should use this place for training, we should listen to our companions' opinions as well. However, for now, we should try to see what challenges this place holds. At the very least, we should ensure that our companions can leave this place safely if they come with me. Guided by Long HaoChen, a hazy layer of golden light emitted from his chest, landing on HaoYue, immediately bestowing his dearest partner with a layer of golden radiance. HaoYue appeared as if even its scales had turned golden. This was the effect of the eternal melody, as per the memories it had granted Long HaoChen, to experience growth here without becoming an enemy of the Tower of Eternity. One must be touched by the aura of the eternal melody. Changing his posture, Long HaoChen put away the Holy Spirit shield in his left hand, and summoned Blue Rain and Light Lotus from within his body. The moment Blue Rain and Light Lotus appeared, Long HaoChen was struck by surprise, because he astonishingly discovered that his most potent offensive weapon had undergone some peculiar changes. Its core remained the same, with no apparent changes, but the light emitted from it had changed. Blue Rain, Light Lotus held in his palm, instantly giving Long HaoChen a feeling of moisture throughout his body being nourished, filled with comfort. The blade itself emitted a layer of golden radiance. Or more precisely, it was a golden mist, somewhat ethereal, yet carrying the essence of light and water. This golden mist enveloped the area around the blade within a foot's range, drifting in a peculiar manner, and the moment Long HaoChen infused it with his spiritual power, the golden light mist condensed instantaneously, forming a 3-foot-long golden blade radiance in front of the sword edge. Evolved, Long HaoChen still vividly recalled the words of the Night Temple's Grand Master, Holy Alliance leader Yang Haohan had once said, that the greatest characteristic of Blue Rain, Light Lotus was its potential for evolution. Could it be that in just a few short months, nurtured by the holy guiding spirit furnace, it had actually undergone an evolution? Observing the elemental fluctuations emitted from Blue Rain, Light Lotus, Long HaoChen could be entirely certain that this peculiar longsword was at least of a radianter level. It might even be higher. Compared to the Holy Spirit sword in his right hand emitting a faint white light, Long HaoChen almost subconsciously switched the heavy sword between his hands, gripping Blue Rain, Light Lotus in his right hand. This action also meant he had chosen to forego the effect of the Holy Spirit set. From now on, Blue Rain, Light Lotus would become his main weapon, with the Holy Spirit sword serving as a secondary weapon at most. This choice was made because it was clear that the effects brought by Blue Rain, Light Lotus, had surpassed the overall Holy Spirit set. Eternal Melody had brought Long HaoChen numerous memories. but when it came to how to train within the Tower of Eternity, the guidance provided was only one: move forward. Without riding on HaoYue's back, Long HaoChen advanced with his two-handed sword in front, taking slow and deliberate steps, his entire being focused on the potential dangers that could arise at any moment. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Just as he was about to take the 4th step forward, from where he had obtained the eternal melody, he suddenly halted his steps, and with his heavy sword raised, he stared intently ahead, vigilant. 2 beams of white light suddenly appeared without warning, 5 meters in front of him, followed by the emergence of 2 massive figures from the ground. They were 2 massive skeletal figures, surrounded by white light, emitting both an aura of death and light simultaneously. Both humanoid skeletons stood at around 2.5 meters in height, with pristine white bones and 3 golden halos beneath their feet each. Remarkably, these were the familiar Conviction Aura, Impact Aura, and Courage Aura, armed with a bone shield in the left hand and a bone knife in the right. Their eye sockets blazed with a golden fire, the same golden flame that burned in the eternal melody. Though this flame was not as pure as that of the eternal melody, boom, 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 they took heavy steps forward, both massive skeletons charging straight at Long HaoChen, an intense and overwhelming pressure instantly erupting, using a charging technique similar to that of a human. Long HaoChen's feet performed the 9-dragon step, quickly leaping to his left. Ensuring that he wouldn't be attacked simultaneously from both sides by the skeletons, he raised his Holy Spirit sword in his left hand horizontally, invoking divine obstruction. Clang! Amidst a powerful roar, Long HaoChen, in his state of divine obstruction, was unexpectedly pushed back by 3 steps, before barely regaining his stance. So strong. Although Long HaoChen didn't know the exact extent of his internal spiritual power, he could roughly estimate that, after obtaining the eternal melody, his internal spiritual power had been raised to over 3,500. Despite this, being pushed back by the skeletons in this situation, it meant that the strength of these skeletons was at least equivalent to 7,000 or 8,000 in internal spiritual power. This was the first trial that the Tower of Eternity had presented to him. The other skeleton didn't engage Long HaoChen from the side, instead, it rushed directly toward HaoYue. It was about to reach HaoYue. Suddenly, a flash of white light, and the skeleton was abruptly immobilized. Just 1 meter away from HaoYue, it changed its trajectory, turning towards Long HaoChen instead, and it was the holy guiding spirit furnace that had caused this effect. And from start to finish, HaoYue seemed to completely ignore it, all 3 of its heads engaged in their own chanting. This demonstrated the unspoken understanding and trust between it and Long HaoChen. Clang! Another collision resounded, but this time it was Long HaoChen's attack. As the Holy Spirit sword blocked the skeleton's strike, his blue rain, light lotus, augmented by light's retribution, swung towards the skeleton. The skeleton's left-hand bone shield swept across, blocking the path of blue rain, light lotus, and a strong collision sound rang out. Indeed, the evolved blue rain, light lotus was exceptional, leaving a mark as deep as an inch on the bone shield as the golden light swept across it. Charging. Long HaoChen suddenly accelerated to the side, dodging the attack of the skeleton attracted by the holy guiding spirit furnace, then spun around and executed a horizontal light slash. Instantly, a bright golden light burst forth from blue rain, light lotus, accompanied by a sharp sword energy that erupted along with the light slash, but it clearly didn't intimidate the 2 skeletons, both of them placing their shields horizontally in front of them, and astonishingly, each of them released a skill called Radiant Aegis, as they charged towards Long HaoChen in the face of the light slash. At this moment, HaoYue's magic was finally ready, with amplified wind blades, fireballs, and light blades, all launched towards the right knee joint of one of the skeletons. Furthermore, the selected skeleton was the one attracted by Long HaoChen's holy guiding spirit furnace. These 2 light-affiliated skeletons proved to be even more formidable than Long HaoChen had imagined. As the skeleton targeted by HaoYue's magic displayed an astonishing level of awareness, abruptly crouching down, and using its bone shield to block in front of itself. Amidst 3 resounding crashes, Long HaoChen was amazed to see that this skeleton suddenly emitted a brilliant golden light, revealing the Radiant Reprisal ability, indicating that it had blocked HaoYue's attack with divine obstruction. Meanwhile, the other skeleton was rapidly closing in on Long HaoChen. Its pristine bone blade gleamed with a holy radiance. Astonishingly, it was a holy sword, heading straight for Long HaoChen's head. Faced with this level of spiritual power suppression, Long HaoChen didn't dare use his ultimate move, the rotational sword of slaughter, as this skeleton could easily use its spiritual power advantage to knock him away. A burst of radiant mist suddenly emanated from blue rain, light lotus, and Long HaoChen sidestepped to defend, invoking divine obstruction once more. Boom! Facing the skeleton's holy sword attack, Long HaoChen unexpectedly managed to block it directly, and what's more, he didn't budge an inch this time. Furthermore, the skeleton's bone blade, astonishingly, had a fissure as deep as an inch, yet the blade wasn't deflected, but slid against blue rain, light lotus towards the side. It struck the ground with a heavy impact. The ground, composed of an unknown material, even against the skeleton's powerful holy sword, only sparked a few flames, without showing any signs of damage. A resounding dragon's roar erupted from around Long HaoChen's body, resonating with Blue Rain, Light Lotus, and the Holy Spirit Sword, as the Retribution Knight's 5th rank attack skill, Dragon Ascension Strike, erupted. Within that dragon's roar, there was even a strange buzzing sound. At this moment, the skeleton was in a disadvantaged position, with its bone blade striking the ground and being affected by the recoil force. This strike launched by Long HaoChen was perfectly timed. Rushed to react, the skeleton could only use its bone shield to block Long HaoChen's attack, amid a sharp boom. To everyone's astonishment, this time, Long HaoChen managed to forcefully shove the skeleton aside, and it tumbled on the ground, and when it rose again, it was holding a shattered bone shield that had broken into pieces. For Long HaoChen, this strike boosted his confidence the most. Being able to block the opponent's powerful attack, and even shattering its bone shield, all came down to one reason: Radiance Ripple. When Divine Obstruction was combined with the shockwaves of Radiance Ripple, not only did the defensive power greatly increase, but there was also an added effect of discharging energy, so the skeleton's Holy Sword attack failed to fully affect Blue Rain, Light Lotus. Even Long HaoChen himself hadn't anticipated that, when Blue Rain, Light Lotus combined with Radiance Ripple, it would become so incredibly sharp. Although the skeleton had formidable combat strength, it was evidently not skilled in defense. It was similar to how he used to be when lacking suitable equipment. The other skeleton didn't manage to appear in front of Long HaoChen, substituting for its companion to block Long HaoChen's successive attacks, as HaoYue had launched a series of attacks after the 3 magics were blocked, initiating a continuous barrage of attacks. Its massive form leaped forward, 3 abilities, not individually powerful, but highly practical, burst forth from its body. A fire elemental resistant fire circle, a light elemental light shudder, and a wind elemental whirlwind dance. The purpose of these 3 spells was singular: to deliver a powerful impact. Even though the skeleton possessed the powerful knight ability Divine Obstruction, under the influence of these 3 impact-based spells, it was knocked aside and staggered a few steps. In the span of these few steps, Long HaoChen gained enough time. The intense fire of the sun nearly instantaneously surged forth from Blue Rain, Light Lotus, and the high-frequency oscillations of Radiance Ripple caused the fire to emit a hazy beauty charge. Sunfire Strike. Without a doubt, the power of Sunfire Strike was not on par with the Holy Sword, but its advantage lay in not requiring the same casting time as the Holy Sword. With Long HaoChen's current cultivation level, he could instantly execute this skill. The combination of skills is extremely subtle. For example, pairing Strike with Sunfire. Not every Retribution Knight possesses this knowledge, but Long HaoChen, the son of ruling Judgment God Seal Knight Long HaoYue, 2 massive suns gleamed. Long HaoChen's twin swords even seemed to vanish at this moment. The hazy radiance of Sunfire completely condensed above these 2 suns, and a scorching aura of light surged instantaneously. At this moment, the difference brought by equipment becomes evident, both using Strike and Sunfire. The radiant sun projected by the Holy Spirit Sword was now more than twice as small as the one formed by Blue Rain, Light Lotus. Roar! The skeleton didn't just sit idly. Within its furious roar, the golden flames in its eyes suddenly intensified, causing a faint layer of golden flames to rise from its body. Astonishingly, it abandoned the bone shield in its left hand, gripped the bone blade with both hands, and swung it down in a chopping motion. In an instant, the air around the skeleton's body seemed to rapidly converge toward it, even exerting a certain gravitational pull on Long HaoChen. And then came the terrifying strike, which cleaved through the gathered air, emitting a piercing screech. Its bone blade completely transformed into a dazzling gold. The momentum of this attack brought a feeling of near inescapability to Long HaoChen. This attack, the feeling it gave Long HaoChen, was as if the heavens and earth were being torn apart. The most terrifying aspect wasn't its attacking power, but the overwhelming pressure it unleashed, forcing Long HaoChen into a head-on confrontation. The 2 suns crossed paths in the air, with their spiritual power fully unleashed. Sunfire Strike transformed into a cross-shaped strike, simultaneously confronting the bone blade. A distant roar accompanied the burst of golden light, akin to fireworks, illuminating an area of hundreds of square meters in an instant. Long HaoChen was sent flying. Blue Rain, Light Lotus emitted a dragon-like hum in his hand, while his own body shimmered with golden light. The shared life effect of the soul chain was activated, and his companions at the base of the mountain shared the damage from this strike. The power of the skeleton's strike was too terrifying, considering that Long HaoChen's attack included Radiance Ripple, Sunfire Strike, Sunfire, and Cross Strike, and his spiritual power was fully unleashed. Alongside the effect of Blue Rain, Light Lotus, this attack brought together such a multitude of powers, yet it was forcibly repelled, even though he had the advantage of initiative. And even without the skeleton's strike being at full power, Long HaoChen was entirely certain that if he hadn't used Blue Rain, Light Lotus to intercept the skeleton's attack, and if the skeleton's bone blade weren't so inadequate as a weapon, he might have been cleaved in 2 by that strike. If the Holy Spirit Sword were in front of him, it would have surely shattered. His palms were already cracking, his arms felt weak, and his chest was stifled. This skeleton was much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. It seemed that it wasn't just its 6th level spiritual power, even its skills were on par. Other than flying, this skeleton was almost like a 6th level Radiant Knight. However, even though the skeleton's strike sent Long HaoChen flying, it wasn't in a good condition either. Its less than sturdy bone blade had shattered, blue rain, light Lotus had left a deep mark on its chest, and the scorching sun fire was burning its body, causing significant damage to the skeleton. This was just one skeleton, but what about the other one? Long HaoChen struggled to regain his footing, regulating his spiritual power as his gaze turned towards HaoYue. What he saw took him aback, his eyes widened in astonishment. With a loud bang, HaoYue swung its massive tail horizontally, striking the skeleton in the waist, and sending it flying, colliding with the skeleton that had been scorched by sun fire, and causing both skeletons to tumble like gourds. HaoYue's melee prowess is actually this strong. This was the first time Long HaoChen had witnessed HaoYue physically attacking. Following this, he witnessed a series of magical explosions, from light magic, fire magic, and wind magic, as if a storm of low-level magic was pelting the two skeletons. While not enough to destroy them, the strength of the attacks was enough to temporarily immobilize them. Long HaoChen took a deep breath, and thought to himself, the current HaoYue must be at the peak of the 6th rank of magical beasts, and it's probably 3rd tier. Without taking equipment into account, comparing their innate strength, he might not even be HaoYue's match, judging by its appearance. Its external spiritual energy should be quite substantial, far surpassing his own. Just then, Long HaoChen felt a warm sensation in his chest, rapidly spreading throughout his body, dissipating the discomfort caused by blocking the skeleton's strike, which had resulted in a stuffy feeling. Warmth flowed through his limbs and body, alleviating the soreness in his arms. Even the torn wound on his palm closed and stopped bleeding. Eternal Melody, without a doubt, was responsible for bestowing upon Long HaoChen such powerful healing abilities. Without any hesitation, blue rain, light Lotus in Long HaoChen's hand shone brightly once again, as his body turned slightly. A red light suddenly illuminated the skeleton he had previously injured. Followed by a soft dragon's hum, blue rain, light Lotus transformed into a dual-colored conical beam of blue and gold and shot out. Light rain Hibiscus thrust. As this strike was unleashed, Long HaoChen carefully observed its effects, and his own expenditure of energy. He was pleasantly surprised to find that, with the evolution of blue rain, light Lotus, when he used light rain Hibiscus thrust this time, the consumption of spiritual energy had significantly decreased. Although it still required 2,000 units of spiritual energy, given his current spiritual level, he wouldn't be left without combat strength after unleashing this attack. Moreover, the power of light rain Hibiscus thrust hadn't diminished despite the reduced energy consumption. In fact, it had grown even stronger. Originally, the final attack of this technique was the fusion of two beams of light resulting in a powerful penetrating force. However, this time it was different. While soaring through the air, the blue light gradually dissipated, melding entirely with the golden light, and at the moment the golden light struck its target, the entire skeleton's body turned into an icy blue, displaying a freezing effect. Boom! Just as the skeleton was attempting to extinguish the sun fire, it instantly shattered into pieces, and the explosion of light rain Hibiscus thrust emitted a faint blue halo that momentarily slowed down its companion, allowing HaoYue's consecutive magical attacks to send it tumbling in place. Finally, one was eliminated. Long HaoChen finally breathed a sigh of relief. Just then, a strange scene unfolded. A point of white light suddenly appeared before Long HaoChen. Long HaoChen instinctively used the Holy Spirit Sword to defend, but it went through empty space, as if it had encountered no resistance. In the next moment, it melded into Long HaoChen's body. Suddenly, a warm and soothing aura emerged in his chest. Long HaoChen quickly inspected himself internally, and was surprised to find that, right in front of the Holy Guiding Spirit Furnace, there was a suspended drop of white liquid. What's more, the purity of this liquid was astonishing. It had no attributes, yet it was highly concentrated. Long HaoChen could be certain that the concentration of this white liquid energy was equivalent to the sum of 10 drops of his liquid spiritual energy. Only one skeleton remained out of the two, and there was no suspense in the ensuing battle. Having learned from his previous lesson, Long HaoChen coordinated with HaoYue, leveraging the attraction ability of the Holy Guiding Spirit Furnace, never allowing the remaining skeleton to have the chance to use its powerful cleaving skill on him. Finally, by taking advantage of the fact that its defensive capabilities were weaker than its offensive strength and its lack of intelligence, he managed to defeat it. However, after killing these two skeletons, Long HaoChen felt both mentally and physically drained. He was surprised to discover that his spiritual energy had been depleted by over 80%. Even HaoYue's magic power had been significantly consumed. The moment the second skeleton was destroyed, another drop of white liquid entered his body, merging with the previous one, without attempting to proceed any further. Given Long HaoChen's current condition, Facing 2 more skeletons of that kind was simply impossible. The purpose of defeating these 2 skeletons was to attempt. Watching the white bone fragments on the ground gradually vanish, Long HaoChen sat cross-legged on the ground with a contemplative expression. He activated his liquid spiritual energy to assimilate the 2 drops of white liquid. The result was exhilarating. Those 2 extremely pure, attributeless energies offered no resistance whatsoever, readily merging into his spiritual energy with just a slight touch. They became a part of his core spiritual energy. Furthermore, just as he had surmised, each drop of this kind of liquid energy that was added in increased his spiritual energy by a substantial 10 points. However, Long HaoChen soon felt baffled, as his current spiritual energy was far from sufficient. The 2 drops of liquid energy were only assisting in his recovery, rather than truly increasing his total spiritual energy. Long HaoChen immediately realized the issue at hand. He had miscalculated. He should have waited until he restored all his spiritual energy before absorbing them. Defeating a skeleton can increase his spiritual energy by 10 points. This is much faster than cultivating. Although those 2 skeletons were quite formidable, the benefits they brought were also quite evident. With the presence of eternal melody, Long HaoChen, amidst the deathly aura of the Tower of Eternity, managed to completely recover his spiritual energy in less than half an hour. Standing up once again, Long HaoChen didn't proceed further. He needed to leave this place. The experience in the Tower of Eternity this time had greatly impacted him. He was very curious about the slumbering cataclysm Influx, but he was well aware that uncovering the truth behind the catastrophe of 10,000 years ago might only be possible when he reaches the 7th floor. However, that's not something that can be achieved in a day or 2. The prohibition left behind by the Necromancer Saint, requiring 9th rank power, makes it utterly impossible for him to ascend the tower's summit. Long HaoChen's initial resistance against the situation had already weakened with the death of the 2 skeletons. I don't want Influx's legacy, but it doesn't prevent me from considering this place for training. Undoubtedly, within the Tower of Eternity, there are still countless mysteries and novelties waiting for him to discover. As for whether to share this with his companions, he needs to think it over before deciding, at least consulting with caier first. After all, the term necromancer has a significant impact on humans. Having come to these realizations, Long HaoChen felt much clearer in his mind, and it was time to head back. They had been inside the cave for at least 5 hours. HaoYue had followed him here as well. Realizing this, Long HaoChen called out to HaoYue, then turned and walked towards the tower's exit. Just then, HaoYue suddenly made a whimpering sound, blocking Long HaoChen's path. Huh! Long HaoChen looked at HaoYue in confusion, asking, "What's wrong?" Xiaoguang leaned its head towards Long HaoChen and spat out a pale golden bead. Long HaoChen instinctively caught it in his hand, and in the moment the golden bead landed in his palm, a burst of golden light erupted, directly entering Long HaoChen's brow. A short memory imprint appeared in Long HaoChen's mind. Shura's slash, gather spiritual energy to condense, cleave heaven and earth with a resounding blow. This is actually a memory of a skill, and moreover, a 6th rank skill. Isn't this exactly the lethal strike that the skeleton nearly used to cut Long HaoChen in half earlier, possessing terrifying killing power?